Members of Zimbabwe's main opposition MDC alliance are expected back in court today.
The group was arrested at the party's headquarters on Thursday last week. The 24 are accused of inciting Wednesday's violent protest, which claimed the lives of 6 people. They appeared in the Harare Magistrates Court on Saturday and were denied bail. The protest was over election results, with the MDC claiming they were rigged. President Emmerson Mnangagwa blamed the opposition for the violence, but says he will set up an independent commission to investigate the killings. The opposition crackdown has, meanwhile, sparked an international outcry, raising grim memories of the violence that marred polls under Robert Mugabe. For more on this, we are joined in studio by the Dean of Social Studies, University of Political Science, Head of Political Science, Professor Charity Manyeruke. Professor, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
First of all, in one word, can you describe the state of Zimbabwe after the elections?
The state of Zimbabwe after elections, is one where Zimbabweans are wishing to move forward after the election. They want to build their country. Of course, it's an issue of bringing the losers and winners together. But of course, also we've seen with the protest that the MDC alliance did not expect their presidential candidate to lose the election, given there's so much campaign, like any other presidential candidate did. They invested their money, they invested time, and a lot of strategies to win the elections. But, in any election, you can only have one winner. And that one winner, as pronounced by the Zimbabwe Election Commission, is President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who won with 50.8% of the vote. And also, some of the losers, amongst them Nelson Chamisa, who lost with 44.3%, and also, Dr. Kupe, Professor Maduku, Kasiamuru are some of the losers in the election. But, they are just losers of the results. But they are winners for Zimbabwe, because that's democracy, being crafted, democracy working, where people at some point have to choose who lead Zimbabwe in terms of the presidency, but also parliament and also local authority. But in total, Zimbabwe must work together as they have done before, in particular from November 2017. Where we saw a new trajectory, being defined for Zimbabwe, where Zimbabwe chose, to bury their past, a past which was not good, especially in the last 2 decades, where, the democratic space became limited, there was economic decline, and, the Zimbabwean people became impatient with the leadership of Robert Mugabe, and they decided by marching into the streets, but also starting an impeachment process, which then resulted in Robert Mugabe actually resigning. But for Zimbabweans, it's a dawn of a new era, where, of course, people have to work together, and what is expected of a nation in terms of post-election period is, how to manage disputes. And our law, the Electoral Act, and also the Constitution clearly provides for what happens when anybody has any dispute, which is to follow the legal route. The electoral court are there so that, evidence can be provided where, any party is not satisfied with the results. But in terms of the international observer missions that were on the ground, generally they were satisfied with in terms of their interim reports, they were satisfied with the free will that was expressed under peaceful environment. Of course, post-election is something else that, marred the outcome. It's the post-election management, But of course, they did make suggestions on areas that require reform. In particular, they talk about, the need to improve communication from Zimbabwe election management and also public media. But they also took some best practices. They mentioned them that Zimbabwe Election Commission has some best practices which can actually be adopted by other countries. In particular, they mentioned the professional conduct in which ZEC conducted itself, and also the training of those officers, polling officers, and also, you know, the way they managed the election, starting with the opening of you know, the voting, which was done right on time, 7 a.m. and closed exactly 7 p.m. ZEC was commended for doing that, and also having the chairman as a woman. I think that was one issue which ZEC was commended for. But of course, there are issues which require improvement, particularly the issue of gender in the whole political system of Zimbabwe did receive attention, to say, of course, there are few women. A lot must be done, in particular, throughout the entire political system, you know, in terms of bringing women to the decision-making table.
Okay. Professor, I gather that you are pretty satisfied with the election results.
Yes, I am satisfied with the election results in terms of what I saw, and also looking at what the observer missions have said.
Okay.
You know, we're looking at local observers and external observers. And I mean, in particular, they also talked about the counting of the results, that it was accurate, and also critical to say that Zimbabwe, you know, election support network, ZESNI, which had 750 observers on the ground, actually also had its estimate in terms of the results. They gave Emmerson Mnangagwa a 50.7% and Chamisa a 45%, which is very close to what the end result was.
Okay.
And ZESNI is a well-respected, you know, election network within the country and outside.
Now, President Mnangagwa actually offered an olive branch to Nelson Chamisa in inviting him perhaps to participate in government. Do you think Chamisa will take advantage of that offer in the future?
Yes, I would want to say that Emmerson Mnangagwa, this is not the first time he is reaching out to opposition. I remember when the MDC leader Tsvangirai was not feeling well, you know, he went out there to speak to him. And of course, in his acceptance speech, we saw Emmerson Mnangagwa calling the opposition to work together with government and say that he will work with the losers and winners to build the country. It's an issue generally in Africa, you know, with opposition parties, that sometimes they think they don't have a role to play in government. Yet, you know, think of communities. You know, nobody stops opposition parties from building their communities, looking at the requirements, you know, and complementing government. The same with civil society. You know, opposition parties don't have to wait for them to be in government to make contributions to their countries or communities. For example, the issue of engagement. You know, opposition parties can play a very critical role in actually engaging, you know, with countries and embracing the international communities. You know, not to actually divide them. If you remember what Nelson Chamisa said, that he can actually, you know, he was going into to look at, you know, cancelling the contracts with the Chinese. You know, that is not good. You know, we want Zimbabwe never to be in isolation again, to be part of the international community, and, you know, as a UN family member, you know, to contribute meaningfully in terms of economic development, democracy, and governance.
Well, prior to the election, the Zimbabwean people were positive on their outlook. They wanted to get back into the Commonwealth. They're looking forward to the economy being turned around because of the elections and a new government. Should Zimbabweans still be positive going forward?
Zimbabweans are still positive. You know, of course, we saw a few people going to the streets. That it is clearly, I mean, to explain the dissatisfaction, because if you remember, Harare was won by MDC Alliance. You know, ZANU-PF only got one. So that must not be taken as Zimbabwe, you know, in terms of expressing dissatisfaction. But there is some semblance of good continuity in terms of re-engagement with the international community. We are aware that this government, led by Emmerson Mnangagwa, actually wrote a letter to the Commonwealth to say that Zimbabwe wants to go back to the Commonwealth, and of course with the re-engagements that is actually taken place, reaching out to the European Union, and in particular, inviting international observers, to observe the elections, shows, the willingness, to be open, the willingness for transparency, the willingness of reaching out, in terms of, even foreign direct investment, which is required at this point in time in Zimbabwe. Because, there are cash shortages. There was a lot of deindustrialization which took place, and also unemployment is reeling in Zimbabwe. There's a huge informal sector, as people were desperate just to earn a living. So it is therefore very, very important that, the Emerson-led the Emerson Mnangagwa-led government must actually reach out and continue to engage the international community as it started in November 2017. So that brings some positivism in terms of the outlook of Zimbabwe going forward. People are looking for jobs. They want jobs. They want their children to, to get jobs after education, which is #1 priority that people are expecting in Zimbabwe.
All right, Professor, let's leave it there. Always a pleasure talking to you. That was our Professor Charity Manyeruke.